right, boys and girls, this week we are going to do a novel study on a book called Chocolate Fever. This book has been around since I was a little girl. I read this when I was your age. So Chocolate Fever by Robert Kimmel Smith. Really cute story. And what we'll do is read 2 chapters a day, and then you'll work on one of the little worksheets that you make in your booklet. So if you've printed things out, you can cut out the little booklet and staple it together. And if you don't have those materials, you can just write the answers down separately. So here we go. Chocolate Fever, Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called Meet Henry Green. There are some people who say that Henry Green wasn't really born, but was hatched, fully grown from a chocolate bean. Can you believe that? Anyway, this particular Henry Green we are speaking of was really born, not hatched, and had a wonderful mom and dad in the bargain. His father was tall and lean and wore eyeglasses, except when he was sleeping or in the shower. Mama Green, whose name was Enid, was a short, slim woman with blue-gray eyes and a tiny mouth that always seemed to be on the verge of a smile. Did you catch all those details there? They all lived in an apartment in the middle of the city, along with Henry's older brother and sister. Mark Green was 10 and tall and very good to Henry, except when they would argue, which was often, and then he would hit Henry on the head with anything that was handy, which sometimes was hard. But mostly, Mark was fun to be with and only got angry when Henry called him Marco Polo. Mark did not like that, and who could blame him? Henry's sister was very, very old, almost 14. She didn't ever argue with Henry or Mark. In fact, she hardly talked to them at all because she was so old and wise and almost grown up. Her name was Elizabeth. The other morning, which was a school day at the end of the week called Friday, Henry, Mark, and Elizabeth were at the table in the dining room having breakfast. Mark was eating eggs. Elizabeth was quietly chewing on her usual breakfast of buttery toast and milk, and Henry was midway between his usual breakfast too. So here's the picture. Wonder what his usual breakfast is. Chocolate cake, a bowl of Cocoa Krispy cereal, and milk with chocolate syrup in the milk to make it more chocolatey, washed down by a big glass of chocolate milk and 5 or 6 chocolate cookies. Sometimes, when it was left over from the night before, Henry would have chocolate pudding too. And on Sunday mornings, he usually had chocolate ice cream. Now, would your parents let you have that kind of breakfast? Not in my house or my classroom, right? The truth was that Henry was in love with chocolate, and chocolate seemed to love him. It didn't make him fat. He was a little on the thin side, in fact. It didn't hurt his teeth. He'd never had a cavity in his life. It didn't stunt his growth. He was just about average height, perhaps even a little tall for his age. It didn't harm his skin, which always had been clear and fair. But most of all, it never, never gave him a bellyache. And so his parents, perhaps being not as wise as they were kind, let Henry have as much chocolate as he liked. Can you imagine a boy having a chocolate bar sandwich as an after-school snack? Well, Henry did just about every day. And when he ate mashed potatoes, just a few drops of chocolate syrup swished through them seemed to make them taste a lot better. Chocolate sprinkles sprinkled on top of plain buttered noodles were tasty too. Not to mention a light dusting of cocoa on things like canned peaches, pears, and applesauce. In the Greens' kitchen pantry, there was always a giant supply of chocolate cookies, chocolate cakes, chocolate pies, and chocolate candies of every kind. There was ice cream, too, chocolate, of course, and chocolate nut, chocolate fudge, chocolate marshmallow, chocolate swirl, and especially chocolate almond crunch. And all of it was just for Henry. If there was one thing you could say about Henry, it was that he sure did love chocolate. Probably more than any boy in the history of the world, his mother would say. How does Henry like his chocolate? Daddy Green would sometimes joke. Why, he likes it bitter, sweet, light, dark, and daily. And it was true up until the day we're talking about right now. Chapter 2, A Strange Feeling. Better hurry, kids, Mama Green called from the kitchen. It's almost 8:30. Let's go, Slowpoke, Mark said to Henry. We don't want to be late. Just one more chocolate cookie, said Henry. He popped it into his mouth and, still chewing, went to his room to get his books. On the way to the front door, Henry went through the kitchen and gathered a handful of chocolate kisses to put in his pocket. He liked to have them handy to munch on at school. But this morning, because he still felt somewhat hungry, Henry stripped the silver wrappers from 2 kisses and popped them into his mouth. Then, after a quick kiss for Mama Green, a kiss that left a little bit of chocolate on her face, Henry, Elizabeth, and Mark headed out of the door on the way to school. At the corner, Henry and Mark waved goodbye to their sister, who had to take a bus to get to her high school. The boys' school, PS 123, was just another block away. At the next corner, Mrs. McIntosh, the crossing guard, waved them across the street. The light is always green for the Greens, she said. It was her own little joke. And she said it just about every morning. This morning, only Mark, who was extremely polite, smiled. Henry just didn't feel like smiling. In fact, he was beginning to feel a little strange. In the schoolyard, the boys went separate ways to join their classes. As usual, there was a lot of pushing and shoving and fooling around. But Henry, who was always very good at things, liked knocking hats off boys' heads and making goofy faces at girls, was quiet. He didn't even say hi when Michael Burke, his best friend, came along. What's the matter with you? Asked Michael, grinning. What do you mean, what's the matter? Henry said. Can't I just stand here? Do I have to carry on and behave like a nut all the time? Okay, said Michael. You don't have to bite my head off. It's just that you're kind of different today. Not like you at all. Just then the whistle blew and all the children began marching into the building. I feel funny today, Henry said to Michael. I have the feeling something's going to happen, and I don't know what. Well, that exact feeling that something was going to happen stayed with Henry all morning. He felt strange in his homeroom, strange when he went to gym class, and in Miss Kimmelfarber's math class, he felt strange all over. Henry couldn't concentrate on what Miss Kimmelfarber was saying. He just sort of sat there and stared. Without thinking about it, he was looking at his arm and the back of his hand. And then he noticed something. There was little brown freckles all over his skin. Now, this would not have been such a startling discovery except for one thing. Those little brown freckles were not there when he woke up this morning. At the front of the room, Miss Kimmelfarber was going through the drill on fractions. She was saying, and if I take 6 1/2 and subtract 1 1/4, what will I have left? She looked directly at Henry, who was looking directly at his arm. Henry, she said, what will I have left? Little brown spots all over, said Henry. And that ends chapter 2. Okay, so here's the materials that you'll get. A truck, and the truck will play an important role in the story. And so what you'll do is you can cut the truck out like this, all right? So you'll cut the truck out along the truck lines. You see this strip right here? This is where you're going to staple all the pieces right here, all right? So this line is where you're going to staple it, all right? So you'll cut your truck out. Next, you'll get a cover, and you can put your name on it. It has 2 on there because, you know, it's for teachers. I would have given you each a half. But anyway, it has a cover. And you can see right here, this strip right here, that's where it's going to be stapled, right there. Then you'll get these pages, but they're kind of labeled wonky. For example, 1 and 3 are together. So you can see page 1 and page 3 are together. Page 2 and page 4 are together. And then page 5 and 6 are together. So you're going to cut them out and then put them in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you can see they all have that strip on them. That's where it gets stapled. So you can put like 2 staples on it right here. And what happens is we'll do 1 of those little pages per day. So day 1 is what goes with chapters 1 and 2. And it says, plan 1 day of meals for Henry. Draw and color a meal on each plate. Write a description of each meal on the plate below. So what would you serve him for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner? You can give him whatever you want. So you can go ahead and write down the foods that you'd give him. And you can draw a picture of that. So that goes with today. So I hope you enjoyed the beginning of Chocolate Fever. Tomorrow we'll have chapters 3 and 4. We'll see you then.